For years, Britain believed it had turned its back on Europe. But the data tells a different story. Brexit has cost the average British citizen thousands, reshaping daily life across the country. Trade barriers have slowed British exports, hitting businesses hardest. Despite promises, migration levels reached historic highs. Britain remains deeply divided over its future. Today, Britain quietly debates its return to Europe. Nearly 2 million jobs vanished as Britain struggled to adapt. Small businesses paid the highest price of new trade rules. Europe remains Britain's most important economic partner. A majority now believe Brexit was a mistake. Behind closed doors, rejoining the EU is discussed again. New trade deals failed to replace lost European markets. The world now revolves around Washington and Beijing. Britain risks losing the next technological revolution. Hospitals feel the economic consequences of Brexit. Young voters overwhelmingly support rejoining Europe. Scotland's future is tied closely to Europe. Financial firms quietly moved operations to Europe. Every border check adds cost and delay to business. Migration rose higher than ever after Brexit. The promises of 2016 failed to become reality. Britain stands at a crossroads once again. Closer ties with Europe could restart growth. Closer ties with Europe could restart growth. In a divided world, alliances matter more than ever. The question is no longer if, but when. A new government rethinks Britain's European future. Exports to Europe remain far below pre-Brexit levels. Outside the EU, Britain negotiates from a weaker position.
Daily life became more expensive for millions.
Years of deadlock delayed recovery. The border question remains unresolved.
Supply chains broke, leaving shelves empty. Medicines faced delays at the border.
Farmers marched as costs soared. Fishing towns were hit hardest.
Factories reduced shifts and output. Investors quietly looked elsewhere. European research funds disappeared overnight.
Skilled workers moved back to Europe.
A generation lost easy access to Europe.
Tourism slowed as travel became complex.
Paperwork replaced freedom of movement.
Britain felt more isolated culturally.
Business leaders urged closer EU ties.
Brussels quietly reopened communication channels.
Media slowly changed its tone on Brexit. Europe's direction is set by Paris and Berlin.
Britain found itself increasingly alone.
The country was exhausted by division.
The government began a final review of Brexit.
The future of Britain hangs in the balance. Inflation eroded household income across the country.
Key sectors struggled to find workers.
Housing costs pushed families to the edge. Energy prices exposed Britain's vulnerability.
Delays became part of everyday travel.
Security cooperation became slower and harder.
British scientists lost easy access to EU networks.
Joint defense planning became more complex.
Environmental rules slowly drifted apart. Businesses faced years of legal uncertainty. Digital trade faced new, invisible borders. Different rules complicated data flows.
Young companies moved to Europe for growth.
Investment in new ideas slowed sharply. Europol's fintech hubs began to overtake London. Different AI rules risked fragmenting innovation.
Visa rules made hiring global talent harder.
Creative workers lost easy access to Europe. Touring Europe became expensive and complex. European film partnerships quietly ended.
Athletes faced new barriers across borders.
The replacement program never matched Erasmus.
Citizens struggled to understand new rights. Travelers waited in long lines once again. for it.
Momentum quietly shifted back toward Europe. Long-term forecasts painted a worrying picture.
Young voters overwhelmingly favoured rejoining.
But look at the economic impact on our generation.
An aging workforce strained productivity.
The NHS struggled with staff shortages.
Scotland's future re-entered the debate.
Identity and borders became inseparable again. Washington expected loyalty, not neutrality.
China could not replace Europe as a market.
The world was no longer opening, it was closing. Optimism faded into quiet realism. Experts urged a strategic reset. Political elites began to change tone. Opposition parties sensed opportunity.
The country edged closer to a political reset.
Leaders avoided the word rejoin, but hinted strongly.
Brussels noticed the change in tone.
Markets reacted to hints of stability. Britain began talking openly again.
The country looked back at the original vote.
Young people demanded a different future.
Manifestos hinted at rebuilding EU ties. Campaigns crossed the country non-stop.
The nation waited for its answer.
Britain stood at the edge of a new chapter.
The new government faced immediate economic pressure.
Emergency briefings replaced campaign promises.
The first call to Brussels signalled a reset. Trade negotiations quietly restarted. Trade negotiations quietly restarted.
Simplifying borders became a top priority.
Companies began planning for growth again.
As we look at the data, foreign investment has cautiously returned. And with that, construction resumes across the skyline.
Rules slowly move back into alignment.
It's a target that wages is tough because the guys from cross spacing.
Discussions began on restoring mobility.
Student exchange programs re-emerged.
Scientific cooperation resumed quietly.
Security cooperation returned to the table. Public support continued to rise.
I think it's wonderful. People are really seeing the benefits now.
Absolutely, the mood has shifted.
The country prepared to ask the question again.
The debate returned, calmer, older, wiser. Wiser.
Headlines no longer screams of Brexit. They questioned.
Europe listened, but waited.
Business leaders demanded certainty.
Parliament prepared for a historic decision. The country waited together.
History was written quietly, one vote at a time.
The result finally arrived. Across Europe, reactions began to flow. Markets reacted instantly. Symbols returned before signatures. The work had only just begun. The next generation watched history change. A decade later, the circle closed.
History is not a straight line. It is a return.